The klaxons were still screaming when the creature vanished. Containment Chamber Delta 9 lay in molten ruins, steel buckled like wet cardboard, and 2 elite security teams were missing. The emergency lights flickered across Deck 17, painting everything in shades of dread. In the command center, Commander Threx of the Zarnak Coalition stared at the chaos through 6 separate monitors, each more useless than the last. "Where is it now?" he demanded, voice vibrating at a pitch usually reserved for mid-battle mating calls. "Unknown, sir," the tactical AI answered calmly. "It dissolved all tracking implants. Life form is non-indexable. Current behavior pattern, uncatalogued. Estimated lethality, absurd." Threx turned to his second-in-command. "Prepare to vent the deck." But before the order could be given, a low-priority ping interrupted from the arboretum. "Disregard," the AI said automatically. "That is a janitorial drone." "Override that," Threx snapped. "Visuals now." A grainy feed crackled to life, revealing the ship's arboretum still intact, eerily peaceful. And there, under a leafy Terran maple, lay the creature, curled in a lazy, monstrous sprawl, spiked tail twitching softly, its claws flexed with dormant menace. Beneath it, like a man who had fallen asleep in the middle of a Sunday picnic, was Lieutenant Danny Carter. Human, unarmed, wearing one sock, and somehow alive. Threx leaned in, unsure his 12 eyes were functioning correctly. "Is he napping?" The AI zoomed in. Danny's biosigns were steady, slight dehydration, shoulder possibly dislocated, but vitals perfectly calm. The creature shifted, letting out a low rumble somewhere between a purr and a minor earthquake. One claw gently tapped Danny's knee like a puppy waiting for attention. "Nope," the AI whispered. "Nope, nope, nope, I quit. I'm installing new protocols. Humans are banned from science ships. They're chaos. Absolute biological chaos." And so began the longest, strangest standoff in interstellar containment history. No one dared move. Not the crew. Not the creature. Not even Danny, who snored softly and muttered something about sandwich crusts. 3 hours earlier, Lieutenant Danny Carter had been avoiding the staff meeting by faking a stomach cramp and hiding in the arboretum behind a particularly leafy cabbage plant. He had a thermos of lukewarm tea, a peanut butter sandwich, and a serious case of burnout. The Yil'vanae had been doing joint research with 6 other species for the last 16 cycles, and Danny was the only human biologist aboard. Which meant he was the only one expected to interpret weird Earth-adjacent anomalies, like, why does it meow when angry, or how come it explodes when happy? "I just needed 5 minutes, he mumbled to the tomatoes, who seemed sympathetic. He'd taken off one sock because it was bothering him, then leaned back against the tree with his sandwich half-eaten and his thermos cradled on his chest. He didn't hear the containment breach. Didn't hear the alarms. Didn't hear the scream of the melted emergency doors. He did, however, register a presence the way someone senses a thunderstorm just behind them. The air thickened. The tomato plants leaned sideways. A scent like ozone and hot copper curled around the edge of his thoughts. Danny cracked one eye open. What he saw was a thing. A massive, taloned, semi-armored shape crouched beside him, triple-jointed limbs, a skull plated like volcanic glass, pupilless eyes gleaming with lightless intelligence. Teeth that seemed to exist in more rows than geometrically reasonable. Danny blinked. His sleep-deprived brain did its best. "Oh, hey," he said. "Weird-looking possum." The creature tilted its head. Danny lazily tore the crusts from his sandwich and tossed them in its direction. "You want these?" The thing caught one in its claws. It sniffed. It ate. Danny, satisfied that the possum wasn't here to yell at him about performance reviews, leaned back and resumed sipping tea. "Cool. Just don't knock over the thermos." It moved closer. Danny reached out a hand and, in a motion that would later cause 6 separate committees to weep blood, scratched its forehead. "Big ol' cat-dog lizard thing, you smell like hot wires and soup." Then he yawned, shifted sideways, and fell asleep with his shoulder half buried under the creature's side. The creature blinked once. Then it circled once. Then it curled around him like a heater the size of a hovercar and shut all 3 eyelids with a deep, seismic sigh. By the time the emergency teams breached the deck, Deck 17 was silent. Well, except for Danny's faint snoring. Absolutely not, Threx said, slamming two of his fists on the table. We are not letting the human go near it again. He's already near it, hissed Dr. Zara, lead behavioral scientist and very close to a public breakdown. He's under it. If you try to move him, it might go into a rage state. We don't know what triggers it. It slaughtered an entire Vorxl battalion with spit. It purrs when he talks in his sleep. They all stared at the feed again. Danny was shifting slightly, brows scrunched in sleep. The creature had one claw draped loosely over his back like a protective blanket. Its breathing matched his. Zira sighed and pointed to the biometric overlay. Look, when Carter moves, it adjusts to maintain pressure contact. That's nesting behavior. Imprinting. You're telling me it thinks he's the parent? No, worse. It thinks he's the nest. The AI pinged in. Update. Just reanalyze some of the pre-breach footage. Threx snapped. Explain. Carter was in the arboretum during the breach. Never left. The creature melted the deck to get to him. The containment doors didn't fail. They were bypassed. It went straight to him. Another moment of silence. Zara spoke softly now. It didn't randomly find him. It sought him out. 10 hours later, Danny woke up slowly, face itchy with tree bark and hair filled with tomato leaf bits. He tried to sit up and promptly winced. Pain lanced down his left side. Oh, ow, shoulder. Ow. Okay. The creature beside him stirred. Danny froze. It blinked at him. Its teeth gleamed. Danny blinked back. Hi. It nuzzled his side. Danny made a sound halfway between a whimper and a sneeze. His shoulder flared again. Medical personnel, stationed just outside the sealed arboretum door, watched in real time as Danny was gently nudged awake by a being with confirmed hyper-lethal claws. Okay, I get it, he mumbled. You want breakfast? The creature rumbled. Danny dug into his bag with his good hand and pulled out the other half of the sandwich. I only got this. Hope peanut butter's not toxic. He held it up. The creature leaned forward and delicately took it with two claws, ate it in one bite. Danny tried to adjust his position again and nearly passed out. Medical requested clearance to enter. Zara blocked it. Not yet. Let's run this slow. Let him talk. If we agitate the thing now, we may lose both of them. The creature leaned over and made a soft growl. Danny blinked. Buddy, did you just purr? Then it licked the side of his face. Danny flinched. Okay. Nope. We don't do face licks. I'm not peanut butter. He clutched his shoulder. Oof. I think something's wrong with this. Like out of the socket wrong. The AI's internal med scan updated. Dislocated left glenohumeral joint. Dehydration. Elevated cortisol. Fatigue levels extreme. Danny reached for his thermos and shook it. Empty. Great. He glanced up at the creature. Well, Snuggle Muffin. I'm calling you Snuggle Muffin now. That's the deal. If you're going to break my shoulder and drool on me, you get a name. The creature tilted its head. Snuggle Muffin did not object. Danny sighed. I need a doctor. You okay if they come in? Just to fix me up? Snuggle Muffin curled tighter around him. Danny muttered. Yeah, I didn't think so. From the outside, the crew watched as the galaxy's most dangerous apex predator curled into a ball around a sleep-deprived, sandwich-holding human and napped. Again. Threx slowly sat down and rubbed his temple with 4 fingers. I am going to be sick. Jera smiled faintly. You might want to get used to this. Security footage from the next 6 hours was classified under Level 10 clearance and nicknamed internally as the nap logs. On them, Snuggle Muffin snored. Danny slept, occasionally twitching. Snuggle Muffin shifted, adjusted, and resumed nest mode. Danny mumbled about overwatered spinach and mandatory nap rights. Medical argued, loudly, from outside the sealed arboretum. Inside, Danny's shoulder turned a shade no shoulder should be. The dislocation had strained the ligaments in his upper back, and the lack of immediate treatment meant the swelling was significant. He was aware of the pain, but he wasn't aware of the tiny fracture in the top of his humerus, or the slight nerve compression happening just beneath the joint. What he was aware of was that if he moved too much, Snugglemuffin whimpered. So he didn't move. Until the pain made him. I'm going to pass out again, Danny mumbled, sweating through his uniform. Either from dehydration or sheer shoulder betrayal. The creature stirred. Danny froze, teeth clenched. I'm fine. You sleep, buddy. Snugglemuffin didn't sleep. It rose slowly, muscles rippling under armor like skin, and made a low, rattling sound in its throat. It padded 3 meters to the wall, stared at it, then walked in a tight circle and returned to Danny, nudging his chest lightly with its snout. Oh, that's sweet, that's ow, still tender, still very broken. Then, in a motion that caught every observer entirely off guard, Snugglemuffin turned and tapped the door panel with one claw. The arboretum door unlocked. Every protocol siren in the command center went off. Wait! Dr. Zera shouted over the AI's voice, shouting, "Containment breach reinitiated. Hold! Look at the creature! It's not leaving. It opened the door." Snugglemuffin nudged Danny again. Danny blinked up at it, barely awake. You want help?" It chuffed. Medical was already on the move. 2 medics in soft body pressure suits, carrying portable diagnostics and trauma packs, stepped in slowly. Both had pulse shockers on standby. Snugglemuffin stared at them. They stared back. One held out a saline injector. "Lieutenant Carter, can we assist?" Danny exhaled sharply. "If you don't mind me screaming for a moment, sure." They approached. Snugglemuffin followed. "No sudden moves," the medic warned under her breath. "Just stabilizing." Yeah, Danny muttered. "Get the shoulder first. It's killing me." The creature let out a low sound again and gently, very gently lowered its head to the ground beside Danny's ribs. One claw rested inches from the medkit. Danny said, "He's supervising." "Is it male?" one medic asked. "I don't know. I'm not checking. I'm calling him he until corrected." The medics worked fast. The swelling made the shoulder reduction difficult. Danny's muscles had tightened reflexively over the joint, and the surrounding inflammation was interfering with rotation. It took sedation, a soft exosplint, and a rapid hydration IV before they could finally reset it. Danny passed out somewhere mid-procedure. The AI noted the drop in biosigns and warned the crew outside. Snugglemuffin growled. The medics backed off immediately. But when the human exhaled in post-procedural sleep, Snugglemuffin visibly relaxed. It lay down again, resuming its protective curl. Hours later, Danny woke in the nap den. It had been hastily assembled out of a recovery ward, with trees from the arboretum dragged inside by Snugglemuffin itself. Nobody had dared say no. One of the pines had dented a bulkhead during re-entry. Danny's arm was in a sling. A flexible brace wrapped his chest and shoulder. His IV beeped quietly, connected to a central drip unit. An overhead display projected his vitals, recovering but shaky. Zera stood at the foot of the bed with a team of xenobiologists, all wearing thick blast-resistant lab coats and holding notepads with the tentative reverence of people who thought a sneeze might get them vaporized. Danny blinked. "Where's the lizard cat dog?" Snugglemuffin was sleeping under the bed. His massive tail stuck out, rising slightly with every breath. Zera said, "It refused to let us separate you. We moved the bed, it followed. You snored. It adjusted the bedding." Danny stared at her. "You moved me without asking?" "We had to set your shoulder." "Fair. Also, your glucose was critically low, and your kidney function was showing early-stage failure. I assume you haven't eaten in 20 hours? Give or take." She handed him a protein bar. Danny took it and chewed slowly. "Tastes like expired drywall." "Good. You're lucid." He pointed with his good hand toward the tail. "So, that's just a thing now?" "Yes," Zera said flatly. "That is now your thing." He chewed some more. "Anyone else survive hugging it?" "No." "I get an award or—" "No." He nodded. "Still fair." Snugglemuffin's behavior over the next 2 days was monitored around the clock. It refused to sleep unless Danny was within 10 feet. It rejected all food unless Danny handed it over. Even when presented with a fresh Vorxl slab, previously a preferred meal, it pushed it aside until Danny personally picked it up and offered it like a treat to a slightly oversized dog. Danny, to his own mild horror, had started talking to it in the same voice his grandma used with her Pomeranian. Yes, you're a murder baby, aren't you? Such a good horrifying anomaly. Who's the galaxy's softest weapon of mass destruction? It preened, actually preened. Zara watched from the observation room and kept muttering, "This should not be working." Danny had been limited to very slow ambulation, per medical protocol. His arm was immobilized for the next 3 weeks minimum. Once swelling reduced, he'd begin physical therapy, but for now, he couldn't lift anything heavier than a sandwich. Which became the new training method. Every time Snugglemuffin performed a non-murderous behavior, like responding to a call tone or sitting when asked, Danny gave it a bite of peanut butter sandwich. Zara logged every instance, twitching with the rising absurdity. He's building operant conditioning using unrefined earth nut paste. One of the xenopsychologists whispered, "Should we write this down or burn the science?" Danny turned from across the nap den and said, "He's also learning hand signs." Snugglemuffin demonstrated by sitting, then lying down, then lifting one claw and doing what could generously be interpreted as a wave. Danny tossed him a crust. "Smart guy," he said fondly. "You're just misunderstood and undersnacked." It was late on day 4 when the diplomatic shuttle arrived. Danny was sitting on the floor, arm in sling, surrounded by what he referred to as emotional enrichment tools. For Snugglemuffin, a collection of Earth squeaky toys and repurposed deflector coil rings tied together with rope. He was just about to get Snugglemuffin to roll over for a cracker when the shuttle docked with a hiss of pressurized air. The Arn diplomat that emerged wore a rigid carapace uniform lined with honor banding and heavy diplomat-grade shielding. He did not blink. Arn didn't. His eyes were compound and unblinking. He stepped into the nap den as if entering a plague ward. "I am here for the human." Danny, not bothering to stand, looked up from his seated position. "Hi, human's kinda busy right now. What's up?" "You are to be removed to a secure facility for debrief and observation." Danny blinked. "Is that optional?" "No." The diplomat reached forward, one clawed hand motioning toward the medic's station nearby. Snugglemuffin stood. Not rose. Stood. It went from lazy loaf of destruction to skyscraper of death in less than a breath. The diplomat froze. Snugglemuffin let out a sound that scorched 3 recording sensors and made one of the walls start to smoke. It placed itself between Danny and the diplomat and began glowing faintly around the vent ridges of its skull. Danny said quietly, Hey, it's okay." Snugglemuffin didn't move. The diplomat turned sharply and left the room. Danny watched him go, then patted Snugglemuffin's flank. That was intense. The creature turned and dropped something at Danny's feet. Danny picked it up carefully. It was a flower. Charred, slightly melted. But a flower. Snugglemuffin gave a low huff and curled up beside him again. Danny sighed. "Yup, I'm the nest." By the end of the week, the nap den had its own power grid. 2 diplomatic observers, a psychological operations team, a peanut butter ration supply chain, and a new sign at the entrance that simply read, "Authorized nest personnel only. Approach human with snacks and gentle voice." Danny Carter wasn't sure when he'd officially become the galaxy's leading expert in accidental apex bonding, but he was deeply aware that his arm still ached every time he moved. His physical therapist, a no-nonsense 4-armed Gorlak named Mary, was treating him with the quiet frustration of someone used to patients trying to skip stretches. "You're healing slower than recommended," she grumbled, guiding his good arm through a passive range of motion drill. "I'm doing fine," Danny mumbled. "You lost 9% deltoid mass in 4 days, and your scapula's sitting wrong. You're doing like someone who's being napped on by a 6-ton nuclear cuddle hazard." Snugglemuffin, asleep behind them, let out a light snort. Danny whispered, "Don't insult him, he's sensitive. He broke your shoulder." Affectionately. Mary rolled all 4 eyes. "You're not cleared for full weight bearing for another 2 weeks, minimum. If it tries to hug you again before then, I swear, on every ligament in your body, I will trank it myself." Danny raised his hand carefully, in line with his therapy limit. "Can I get that in writing?" Later that same day, Commander Threx received a formal memo from the Interstellar Galactic Council. It was short. Subject: Human-Apex Interaction Incident, Yil'vanae, Crimson-7. Directive: Immediate onboarding of Carter Protocol. Beneath it, in smaller font, definition. Carter Protocol, a field management strategy in which emotionally unusual humans are deployed in proximity to high-risk apex entities for potential neutralization via bonding. Tools may include, but are not limited to, sandwiches, affection, plants, nap spaces, and unfiltered conversational rambling. Threx closed the file and stared blankly at the wall. "This is weaponized softness," he muttered. "We've invented a weapon of mass napping." Elsewhere on the ship, Dr. Zara was compiling a comprehensive behavioral study. She had 40 hours of footage, 27 confirmed examples of emotionally adaptive mimicry from the creature, and several audio clips of Danny mumbling in his sleep that made the creature whimper sympathetically. She paused one of the recordings and leaned back in her chair. "Have we considered the possibility," she said aloud to her team, "that human emotional frequency is a kind of behavioral override?" The junior Gorlak biologist beside her said, "You mean like a psychic trigger?" "No, like a biological static, something so innately contradictory that it confuses hostility into submission. Or," he added, "it's just that no one's ever offered it a sandwich before." Jera hated that he might be right. Day 8. Danny tried walking the corridor outside the nap den. He had full clearance now. Technically, medically, he was cleared for light activity, and his therapist had demanded gentle upper body use with assisted stabilization. So he pushed a cart. A snack cart. Behind him, Snugglemuffin padded softly, sniffing at everything. "This is the food corridor," Danny explained over his shoulder. "Ship commissary. Lots of smells. Try not to eat anything alive." The creature snorted. Its head brushed the ceiling. Crew members scrambled into side rooms. A Vorxl technician dropped an entire crate of protein bars and then vanished behind a bulkhead. Danny sighed. "Okay, we're still working on public relations." Snugglemuffin paused beside the dropped crate. He looked at Danny. Danny raised an eyebrow. "No, you have to wait until we get to the samples." Snugglemuffin sat perfectly still. Danny blinked. "Okay, I was kidding. But wow. Good boy?" The creature's tail thumped once against the wall, hard enough to rattle a light fixture. When they reached the commissary, Danny handed him a tray of assorted items, nut bread, dried fruits, and something unidentifiably green that Snugglemuffin had shown interest in during the last feeding session. He took it delicately, walked in a circle, then lay down at Danny's feet. Danny smiled faintly. "You're not so bad, you know." Zira, watching via drone, whispered, "He's parenting it." Threx, listening in, muttered, "He's got an Apex death engine, taking snack orders like a golden retriever. That's not parenting. That's dark magic." The Zarn diplomat returned. He had paperwork this time. "I am here," he announced, "to witness the behavioral integrity of the bonded Apex entity." Danny looked up from his seat in the arboretum. He was teaching Snugglemuffin to recognize color-coded objects, a task that required a complex mix of patience, bribery, and minor psychological tricks. "Cool," Danny said. "You want to help?" The diplomat hesitated. "I am not trained in xenobonding." "Neither am I. Pick up that red thing and hand it to me." It was a soft, squeaky chew ring. The Zarn touched it with 2 fingers like it might explode. Snugglemuffin watched. Danny gave a soft click with his tongue. The creature looked up. "Red," Danny said. Snugglemuffin stared at the toy. The diplomat held it forward. Snugglemuffin looked at Danny again. "Yeah, that one." Snugglemuffin took it, gently, then dropped it in Danny's lap. Danny handed him a treat. "Good boy." The Zarn sat down slowly. He didn't speak for several minutes. Finally, he said, "The council may need to reevaluate humanity." Danny shrugged. "You say that like it hasn't happened already." That night, Danny had another physical therapy session. He winced as Mary helped him rotate his arm back over his head. "Still stiff," she said. "No kidding. You'll need 6 more weeks before you get full strength back, assuming no further apex snuggles." Danny grunted. "You got lucky," she added. "Shoulder like yours? Could have torn your labrum? You'd be out for months, full surgical rotation. I'll take mildly shredded over completely shredded." "Don't push it," Start lifting anything over 5 kilos, you'll just set yourself back. Danny nodded. From the far corner of the room, Snugglemuffin, who had been sitting like an obedient statue, rose and walked over. He dropped a pillow at Danny's feet. Mary blinked. Did it just bring you a comfort object? Danny reached down with his good hand and accepted the pillow. Yup. I hate this. You're just jealous. I'm furious. 10 days post-bonding. The report was ready. Zara uploaded it to the galactic database under provisional classification ZB-HFY-Crimson-7, emotional disarmament via human contact. The summary read, Subject Crimson-7 demonstrates complete behavioral override in presence of bonded human. Signs of trauma-induced aggression diminish rapidly, with continued exposure to positive human stimulus. Further interactions reveal a capacity for learning, empathy, mirroring, and preference for sleep proximity. This suggests an emotional processing model previously thought impossible for its classification. Conclusion: the human Lieutenant Daniel Carter is not a trainer, not a commander, not a scientist of rank. He is, for lack of a better term, an emotional anchor. His presence disrupts the threat profile of Crimson 7 inches ways our current sciences do not yet understand. He is to remain assigned to the subject under what is now called the Carter Protocol. And under no circumstances are humans to be permitted unsupervised interaction with apex predators, because they might just win. The Yil'vanae limped back to orbit 6 weeks later, missing 1 research deck, 3 patients' thresholds, and all illusions of scientific control. By then, Lieutenant Danny Carter's arm had healed enough to allow partial lifting. His shoulder still ached in cold environments, and his therapist insisted on another month of strength training, but he could finally sleep without the brace. Not that he got to sleep much. Snugglemuffin had taken to nocturnal wanderings. Every 2 hours, it would lumber down the ship's hallways, sniff at walls, then curl beside Danny's bunk again with the heavy thud of a collapsing star. Security stopped reacting after the second night. Someone even installed a pressure pad outside his door that read, "Occupied by catastrophe." Danny didn't find it funny. He found it weirdly comforting. A month after the incident, the Galactic Council convened. It was a spectacle representatives of 67 species, each bringing translators, envoys, and medics on standby. They reviewed footage of Danny asleep in Snugglemuffin's claws, the diplomat nearly incinerated, and the peanut butter operant conditioning logs. The final consensus took 14 hours of debate and 1 minor fistfight between the Vorxl and the Gorlak delegations. The Council's conclusion was simple. Humans are to be placed under supervised emotional hazard classification. Their behavioral unpredictability may alter the instincts of apex entities. Further exposure risks spontaneous domestication events. Danny was mentioned by name. Lieutenant Daniel Carter's techniques are to be documented under the Carter Protocol. Future research involving human empathic variables must be approved by a multi-species ethics board. He read the summary in silence, sitting cross-legged in the arboretum beside Snugglemuffin, who was contentedly chewing on a deactivated maintenance drone. He said softly, "You're famous now." Snugglemuffin flicked an ear and exhaled smoke. By week 10, Danny had been cleared for full duty, but given the option of early retirement, his shoulder had regained almost 80% of its range of motion, and he could lift without pain again. His physical therapist signed off on his release after making him promise not to wrestle any more monsters. He signed the paperwork, boarded the transport to Earth, and looked out the window as the stars smeared into light. Snugglemuffin was secured in a reinforced cargo bay designed for biologically unique companions. The crew refused to call it a containment hold. The AI, now fully recovered from its nervous breakdown, spoke through the cabin speaker. "Lieutenant Carter, are you certain about this relocation? Galactic Command still recommends orbital isolation." Danny yawned. "Yeah, he doesn't like ships. I promised him fresh air. Earth air may not be compatible with its hemoglobin composition. He'll adapt, so will my garden." The AI paused. "You intend to house it on your property?" Danny glanced toward the sleeping form of the galaxy's most dangerous organism. House is a strong word, more like share a fence. 6 months later, the Carter Sanctuary for Emotionally Difficult Species opened on a stretch of farmland in Virginia. The media called it the world's most dangerous petting zoo. The government called it classified humanitarian outreach. Danny called it home. The place had proper containment fields, a medical wing staffed with xeno-veterinarians, and a small therapy pool for aquatic anomalies. There were signs warning visitors not to bring perfumes, weapons, or unsealed snacks unless cleared by staff. Snugglemuffin had a fenced paddock roughly the size of a football field, complete with an artificial cave, temperature-regulated moss beds, and a feeding station that dispensed peanut butter sandwiches via pneumatic tube. Danny still made the sandwiches himself. The creature would only eat them if he handed the first one over personally. Dr. Zira visited 3 months after the sanctuary opened. She stepped out of the transport in a tailored coat and wide-brimmed sunshield, staring in disbelief at the enormous silhouette basking in the meadow. "It's calm," she said. "Yeah," Danny answered, waving from the porch. "He likes mornings." Snugglemuffin raised its head and rumbled softly when it saw her. The sound made the ground vibrate, but Danny didn't flinch. "You got the reports I sent?" he asked. "Yes," Zira said, still watching the creature stretch like a massive cat. Behavioral aggression at 0 for 60 days. No incidents, no fatalities. "You realize that's statistically impossible?" Danny smiled. "Yeah, that's kind of the theme." Zira shook her head. "And you're sure it doesn't pose a threat?" Danny glanced over at the creature, who was now rolling on its back, kicking at the clouds, only to sandwiches. That night, under a cool earth sky, Danny sat on the porch with a mug of tea. His shoulder twinged in the evening chill, but it was a manageable ache, the kind that reminded him he'd survived something impossible. Snugglemuffin lay nearby, a mountain of quiet breathing and glowing eyes. Crickets sang. Somewhere in the field, one of the smaller rescues, a timid insectoid predator the size of a car, clicked its wings nervously. Snugglemuffin turned its head and made a gentle hum, the universal sound of reassurance. Danny smiled. "You're good with the new guy." The creature blinked slowly. "You know," Danny continued, "they wanted to study how we bonded, all those scientists with scanners and theories." He sipped his tea. "But maybe it was just simple. You wanted calm, I wanted quiet. Guess we met in the middle." Snugglemuffin's tail thudded once. Danny leaned back in his chair. "You still dream?" The creature gave a low, vibrating sound that might have been a yes. "Well, if you do, dream about peanut butter. That's safer." A year later, Danny's shoulder had full mobility. The scar tissue along the joint line was faint but visible, a small reminder of the day he'd been turned into the galaxy's least likely apex handler. The Carter Sanctuary expanded to include a small team of xenobiologists and psychologists. They specialized in cross-species emotional regulation. Visitors were strictly limited, but governments sent regular funding and samples for rehabilitation attempts. The nickname stuck. Across the galaxy, people called it the Snugglemuffin method. And the creatures, some massive, some fragile, all considered unmanageable, learned to calm down around humans who offered the same strange mix of stubborn compassion and snacks. Danny kept a strict recovery routine for himself. Morning stretches for the shoulder, a jog along the fence, then breakfast with Snugglemuffin, who insisted on sitting 3 inches from his plate every time. He'd stopped trying to explain to people why it worked. He didn't think it could be explained. Some creatures fought, others fled. Humans bonded, even when it made no sense. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, an incoming shipment arrived from a research outpost near Sirius. The crate was marked, "Handle with extreme caution, Containment Level Crimson-7." Zara's voice came through the comlink. "Danny, you might want to supervise this one personally." Danny sighed, rubbing his shoulder. "Of course I do. What is it this time?" Records say it dissolved 3 armored tanks and 1 probe team before capture. He whistled softly. Cheerful little thing. He signed the delivery form, watched the crate settle into the containment bay, and then turned to Snugglemuffin. The creature tilted its massive head, eyes narrowing curiously. Danny exhaled through his nose. "Don't give me that look. We're not adopting anyone new until I bake cookies." Snugglemuffin blinked. Danny paused. "Maybe brownies." The containment crate rattled faintly. Snugglemuffin growled once protective, low. Danny grinned tiredly. "Relax, big guy. We'll handle it. We always do." He walked back toward the house, the sunset painting the fields in gold, Snugglemuffin following close behind like an oversized shadow that had finally learned peace. The world was quiet, the stars were bright. And for the first time in a long while, the galaxy's deadliest creature purred itself to sleep beside a human who'd never meant to be a hero, only someone who wanted 5 more minutes of peace.